Alright, let's have a little chat. You think you know women's wrestling? You think you've seen it all? Well, I'm here to tell you that what you've seen is just the tip of the iceberg, the opening bell of a revolution that I helped lead from the front. This isn't just some random list of matches thrown together. This right here is the essential watch list. This is the story of how we went from being an afterthought to being the main event, the biggest draw, the talk of the entire industry. These are the battles that tore down walls, shattered glass ceilings, and forced everyone to pay attention. These matches are the milestones, the turning points, the moments where the world had no choice but to stand up and acknowledge that the women's division was not just good, it was the best thing going. From the hallowed halls of NXT to the grandest stage of them all, WrestleMania, these bouts showcase the heart, the soul, and the sheer grit that defines us. It's a story of evolution, of fighting for every single inch of respect we've earned. We didn't ask for a revolution, we became the revolution. So, get your notebooks out, get ready to fire up the WWE Network, because class is in session. I'm going to walk you through the absolute must-see matches that define the modern era of women's wrestling. And when I'm done, I want to hear from you. Get down in those comments and tell me what your favorite women's match of all time is. Don't be shy, let me know what match lit a fire in you. Now, let's get to it. Let's start where the whole thing really kicked into a different gear. NXT. Down in Florida, we were cooking up something special, something the main roster hadn't quite caught up to yet. We were hungry, and we were determined to prove that we could steal any show we were on. And at NXT Takeover Brooklyn in 2015, two of my fellow horsewomen, Sasha Banks and Bayley, didn't just steal the show. They burned the whole damn arena down and built a new one in their image. This wasn't just a match, it was a statement. You see, before this, women's matches were often seen as a cool down or a popcorn match, a nice little break before the real action. Sasha and Bayley looked at that idea and laughed. They went out there in front of a rabid Brooklyn crowd and put on an absolute clinic. The storytelling was masterful. You had Sasha, the boss, arrogant, dominant, the champion who thought she was untouchable. And then you had Bayley, the ultimate underdog, the heart and soul of NXT, fighting for her dream with every fiber of her being. The crowd was with them for every single second. Every near fall, every reversal, every high-risk move had the fans on the edge of their seats. The psychology was off the charts. You felt Bayley's desperation, her refusal to give up. You saw Sasha's frustration turn to disbelief as this woman she'd dismissed just kept coming. It was more than just moves, it was a story unfolding, a story of passion and ambition that everyone in that building and everyone watching at home could connect with on a deep emotional level. The physicality was on another level too. They weren't holding anything back. That reverse Rana from the top rope that Bayley hit, my God, it was breathtaking. It was a signal that we weren't just going to wrestle like the men, we were going to innovate, we were going to be better. They pushed each other to their absolute limits, leaving everything they had in that ring. It was a war, but a beautiful one, fought with skill and a burning desire to be the best. When Bayley finally hit that Bayley to belly and got the 3 count, the explosion from the crowd was deafening. It was pure, unadulterated joy. It was the culmination of a perfect story. This match is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the most important matches in WWE history, full stop. It redefined what a women's match could be, and set the standard that all of us are still chasing to this day. It was the blueprint for the revolution. Fast forward to WrestleMania 39, the grandest stage of them all. By now, women headlining and stealing the show wasn't a surprise, it was an expectation. But even with those high expectations, what Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair did that night in Hollywood was something else entirely. This wasn't just a wrestling match, it was a heavyweight fight. It was two of the most dominant, powerful, and athletic women in the world, beating the absolute hell out of each other for the SmackDown Women's Championship. From the second the bell rang, the intensity was palpable. You could feel it through the screen. There was no feeling out process, no slow build. It was just pure, unadulterated aggression. Every chop from Charlotte echoed through that stadium. Every strike from Rhea looked like it could knock a normal person out cold. This was a battle for supremacy, a clash of two titans who both believed deep in their bones that they were the alpha of the division, and they were going to prove it. What made this match so special was the physicality. It was brutal. It was stiff. It was real. They weren't just performing moves, they were fighting. You saw the welts forming on their chests, you saw the exhaustion and the pain on their faces, but you also saw the defiance. Neither one was willing to give an inch. Charlotte, the established queen, refusing to be dethroned. Rhea, the young powerhouse, determined to rip the crown from her head. It was a story told through sheer force of will. There were moments in that match that were just breathtaking. The German suplex Charlotte took right on her face. The way Rhea powered out of the figure eight. And that finish, my word. Rhea Ripley, after taking everything Charlotte could throw at her, hoisting the queen up on her shoulders while on the top rope and hitting the riptide for the win. It was an incredible display of strength and a definitive passing of the torch. It was a star-making performance on the biggest stage possible. This match wasn't just a show stealer, it was a statement. It showed the world that women's wrestling could be just as physical, just as intense, and just as captivating as any men's main event. It was a throwback to old-school, hard-hitting battles, but with a modern, athletic flair. Rhea and Charlotte didn't just have the match of the night, they had one of the best WrestleMania matches in recent memory, period. A true masterpiece of brutality. Before there was a revolution, before there was a main event at WrestleMania, there were pioneers. Women who were fighting for respect when the world wasn't quite ready to give it to them. And at the top of that list, you have two names: Trish Stratus and Lita. Their rivalry defined an entire era of women's wrestling, and on December 6, 2004, they did something that was, at the time, unthinkable. They main evented Monday Night Raw. Think about that for a second. In 2004, the main event of Raw was sacred ground. It was reserved for the likes of Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Chris Jericho. For two women to be given that spot for the Women's Championship was absolutely massive. It was a vote of confidence from the company, and a testament to how over Trish and Lita were with the audience. The fans were invested in their story, and they deserved that spotlight. The match itself was everything it needed to be. It was the culmination of a long, bitter feud. Trish, the arrogant, dominant champion. Lita, the fiery, beloved challenger who had been through hell and back. The crowd in their hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina was electric. They were hanging on every single move, living and dying with every near fall. You could feel the history being made as it happened. Lita was a woman possessed that night. She was flying around the ring, hitting that suicide dive to the outside that nearly took her own head off. That's the kind of passion we're talking about. She was willing to sacrifice her body to win that championship and prove that she belonged in that main event spot, and Trish, ever the perfect foil, was bumping and selling for her, making Lita look like an absolute killer. When Lita hit that moonsault for the win, the roof came off the place. It was a massive emotional moment. It wasn't just a title change, it was a validation. It proved that women could draw. It proved that women could main event. It proved that women could tell compelling stories that the audience would invest in. This match laid the groundwork for everything that came after. Without Trish and Lita main eventing Raw, there's no Hell in a Cell, there's no Royal Rumble, and there's certainly no me in the main event of WrestleMania. It all starts here. Now let's talk about the big one, the one that changed everything forever. WrestleMania 35, New York, MetLife Stadium, 80,000 people screaming their heads off. And for the first time in history, the main event featured women. Not just any women either. You had the baddest woman on the planet, Ronda Rousey. You had the Queen, Charlotte Flair. And you had me, the man, Becky Lynch. The build-up to this match was the hottest thing in all of wrestling. It was personal, it was chaotic, it was real. It started with me winning the Royal Rumble on one good leg, defying the odds and the authority figures who tried to hold me down. It became a story about refusing to stay down, about fighting for your shot no matter who or what stood in your way. And the people, they got behind it. They got behind the man because they saw a piece of themselves in that fight. Every week on Raw and SmackDown, the three of us were at each other's throats. There were brawls, there were arrests, there were suspensions. It felt like the whole show was revolving around us because it was. We were the biggest stars, with the most compelling story, and we were finally being given the platform we deserved. The pressure was immense. We weren't just fighting for ourselves, we were fighting for every woman who came before us, and every woman who would come after. Walking out into that stadium is a feeling I'll never be able to fully describe. The noise, the energy, the sea of people, it was overwhelming. But the moment the bell rang, it was just the three of us. Three of the best in the world, ready to tear each other apart for the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships. It was a chaotic, messy, beautiful fight. It wasn't a technical masterpiece, but it was never meant to be. It was a war. The finish might have been controversial, with me catching Ronda in that crucifix pin, but it was decisive. I walked out of WrestleMania with both championships held high above my head. Becky 2 belts. We had done it. We had main evented WrestleMania. We proved that the women's division wasn't just a special attraction, it was the attraction. That night, we didn't just break a glass ceiling, we smashed it into a million pieces and danced on the shards. It was the culmination of the women's revolution. 2 years after I main evented, the women were back in the headline spot at WrestleMania 37. But this time, it was a different kind of history being made. This time, it was Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair, two of the most talented, charismatic, and athletic performers on the entire roster. And for the first time ever, two black women were standing across the ring from each other in the main event of WrestleMania. The significance of that moment cannot be overstated. You could see it on their faces before the bell even rang. The emotion was pouring out of them. Michael Cole's call of the moment, "This is for all the little girls who look like them," was perfect. It was bigger than wrestling. It was a moment of representation, of inspiration, of pure, unadulterated pride. You could feel the weight of history in the air, but you could also feel the excitement for the classic match that was about to unfold. And what a match it was. Sasha, the blueprint, at the peak of her powers, the established veteran looking to cement her legacy, and Bianca, the EST, the Royal Rumble winner, the newcomer with unbelievable power and athleticism, looking to prove she belonged. It was a clash of styles and a clash of personalities, and it was absolutely captivating from start to finish. They had the crowd in the palm of their hands. The storytelling was beautiful. Bianca's raw power against Sasha's technical prowess and cunning. The moment Bianca used her braid to whip Sasha, the sound echoed through the stadium. It was a shocking, unique moment that people will be talking about for years. It was a symbol of Bianca using her uniqueness, her very identity, as a weapon to achieve her dream. It was brilliant. The finish was pure poetry. Bianca, after a back-and-forth war, hoisting Sasha up for the KOD and planting her in the middle of the ring for the 3 count. The emotion that poured out of Bianca as the referee's hand hit the mat for the 3rd time was one of the most genuine and heartwarming moments you will ever see in a wrestling ring. She had done it, they had done it. They delivered a classic main event worthy performance and etched their names in the history books forever. Let's go back to NXT for a minute, because some of the most innovative and exciting women's wrestling was happening there long before it got the spotlight on the main roster. At NXT Takeover Brooklyn 3 in 2017, we witnessed a clash between two of the most unique and skilled athletes you'll ever see, the undefeated NXT Women's Champion, Asuka, and the challenger Ember Moon. This match was a masterclass in athleticism and in-ring storytelling. Asuka's undefeated streak at this point was legendary. She had run through everyone in NXT. She seemed absolutely unbeatable, this unstoppable force of nature. And then you had Ember Moon with her incredible agility and her devastating finishing move, the Eclipse. She was presented as the one person who might, just might, have the tools to finally dethrone the Empress of Tomorrow. The dynamic was set perfectly. The match itself was a beautiful display of contrasting styles. Asuka, with her stiff kicks, her submission expertise, and her psychological warfare. She would taunt Ember, play mind games, try to get inside her head, and Ember, with her high-flying, explosive offense, would fight back with pure fire and determination. The pacing was incredible, building from a technical chess match into an all-out war. You believed that Ember could win. There were several moments where it felt like the streak was truly in jeopardy. The crowd was desperate for her to hit the Eclipse, knowing that if she could connect with it, it would be over. The tension every time she went to the top rope was insane. Asuka, for her part, was brilliant in her desperation, doing whatever it took to avoid that one devastating move. In the end, Asuka's cunning and experience won out. She managed to use the referee as a shield, play possum, and lock in the Asuka lock for the submission victory. While Ember lost, she came out of it looking like an absolute star. She had pushed the unbeatable champion to her absolute limit. This match showcased the depth of talent in NXT and proved that you could tell a compelling story of an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object, all within the confines of the women's division. It was a true NXT classic. History. We keep talking about it because we kept making it. In 2016, the rivalry between Charlotte Flair and Sasha Banks was the hottest feud in the entire company. They were trading the Raw Women's Championship back and forth in a series of incredible matches. It was only fitting that their feud would culminate in a way that no women's feud had before. They were going to hell, in a cell, and they were going to main event the pay-per-view. This was another monumental first. The Hell in a Cell match is, honestly, one of the most brutal and dangerous stipulations in WWE history. It's a career-altering, body-breaking structure. For the company to put two women in that match and in the main event spot was a massive sign of trust. It was them saying, "We believe you can handle this, we believe you can deliver," and boy, did they ever. The entrance alone was epic. Charlotte being carried to the ring on a throne, Sasha coming out in an Escalade like her hero, Eddie Guerrero. The big fight feel was off the charts before the bell even rang. The brawl that happened before Sasha could even get in the cell, with Charlotte powerbombing her through the announce table, was a shocking and brutal start that set the tone for the entire match. Inside that cell, they used the structure to its full, violent potential. They threw each other into the steel walls, they used chairs, they told a story of pure, unadulterated hatred. This wasn't about athletic competition anymore, this was about destroying your opponent. It was uncomfortable to watch at times, but it was exactly what a Hell in a Cell match should be. It was violent, it was dramatic, and it was honestly unforgettable. Charlotte getting the win after a grueling, punishing battle felt right for her character, the ruthless queen. But in reality, there were no losers in this match. Sasha and Charlotte proved that women could be just as hardcore, just as brutal, and just as captivating in a main event setting as any of their male counterparts. They took a massive risk, put their bodies on the line, and created a moment that, honestly, kicked another door wide open for the rest of us. Let's turn the clock back a bit, to a time before the revolution was a buzzword. WrestleMania 22 in Chicago. Trish Stratus, the beloved dominant women's champion, defending her title against a newcomer, Mickie James. But Mickie wasn't just any newcomer. She was Trish's biggest fan, who had slowly revealed herself to be a dangerous, obsessed stalker. The storyline was edgy, controversial, and absolutely captivating. And the match? It was a masterclass in character work and psychology. This wasn't just about winning a championship, it was about the culmination of a deeply personal and twisted story. Mickie's character work was phenomenal. She was unhinged. She was unpredictable. The crowd in Chicago, who notoriously love a good villain, was completely behind her. They booed the hero, Trish, and cheered every single move Mickie made. The atmosphere was electric and completely unique. The in-ring action was fantastic, but honestly, it was the little things that made this match so memorable. Mickie's mannerisms, her taunts, the way she would mock Trish, it all played into the story of this psycho fan who was finally getting her hands on her idol. The match is famous, or maybe infamous, for a controversial moment that was so edgy, it had to be edited out of some broadcasts. It pushed the envelope of what was acceptable at the time and made the whole thing feel even more dangerous and unpredictable. The finish was perfect storytelling. Mickie, after playing mind games the entire match, faked a knee injury to lure Trish in, then hit her with a thunderous chick kick to get the win and the championship. The pop from the crowd was enormous. They had witnessed the birth of a new star and the perfect conclusion to one of the best-told stories in the history of the women's division. This match is so important because it proved that women's wrestling could be driven by character and story just as much as by in-ring action. Trish and Mickie didn't need high-flying moves or brutal weapon shots. They had a compelling narrative that the audience was completely invested in. It was a psychological thriller played out in a wrestling ring, and it remains one of the greatest women's matches in WrestleMania history. Sometimes you don't need a long, drawn-out story. Sometimes you just need to put three of the best wrestlers in the world in a ring together, and let them create magic. That's exactly what happened at Fastlane in 2023. When Io Sky defended her WWE Women's Championship against two legends in their own right, Charlotte Flair and Asuka. This was a triple threat match that was pure, chaotic, high-octane action from bell to bell. The dynamic was fascinating. You had Io, the genius of the sky, a high-flying champion trying to prove she could hang with the established legends. You had Charlotte, the queen, looking to add a record-breaking number of titles to her collection. And you had Asuka, the Empress of Tomorrow, as dangerous and unpredictable as ever. Any one of them could have won at any moment, and that's what made it so exciting. The pace of this match was relentless. There was no downtime. It was a constant flurry of moves, reversals, and breakups. The three-way chemistry was off the charts. They seamlessly moved from one spot to the next, creating a beautiful symphony of violence. Io's aerial assaults, Charlotte's power moves, Asuka's submissions and strikes, it all blended together perfectly. It was a showcase of three distinct styles, all meshing to create something special. One of the best things about a great triple threat is the drama of the near falls. There were so many moments where you thought the match was over. Charlotte would have Asuka in the figure eight, only for Io to come flying in with a moonsault to break it up. Asuka would have Io in the Asuka lock, only for Charlotte to hit a big boot. It kept you guessing, it kept you on the edge of your seat, and it highlighted the intelligence and ring awareness of all three women. The finish was a stroke of genius. With Charlotte locking Asuka in the figure eight, it looked like a new champion was about to be crowned. But then, from out of nowhere, Io Sky came off the top rope with her breathtaking moonsault onto both women, pinning Charlotte to retain her title. It was a clever, opportunistic finish that protected everyone and made Io look like a brilliant and crafty champion. It was a reminder that sometimes, the best story is the one told by the action in the ring. Let's end with a match that was truly ahead of its time. Survivor Series 2002, Trish Stratus defending her women's championship against Victoria in a hardcore match. Now in 2002, the idea of a women's hardcore match was pretty much unheard of. The women's division was still largely defined by evening gown matches and pillow fights. But Trish and Victoria were different. They wanted to be taken seriously as wrestlers, and they were willing to get brutal to prove it. Victoria's character at the time was fantastic. She was this unhinged, psychotic villain from the wrong side of the tracks, and she was the perfect opponent for the polished, popular champion, Trish. The hardcore stipulation was added to reflect the intensity and hatred of their feud. They weren't just going to have a wrestling match, they were going to have a fight. And it was unlike anything the audience had seen from the women's division before. They used everything they could get their hands on. Trash cans, kendo sticks, ironing boards, mirrors. It was violent, it was innovative, and it was shocking for the time. Victoria smashing a mirror over Trish's head was a genuinely jarring moment. It showed a level of brutality that was usually reserved for the men's division. They were proving that they could be just as tough, just as creative, and just as willing to put their bodies on the line. The storytelling within the violence was excellent. Trish, the champion, was out of her element in this environment but showed incredible heart and toughness, refusing to quit. Victoria was completely in her element, a sadistic force of nature who seemed to enjoy inflicting pain. It wasn't just random violence, it was character-driven violence, which is what makes a great hardcore match. Victoria eventually got the win after spraying a fire extinguisher in Trish's face and hitting the suplex. It was a definitive, brutal victory that established her as a major threat in the division. This match was so important because it was a precursor to everything that would come later. It was a glimpse into the future. It showed that women were capable of so much more than what they were being allowed to do at the time. It was a hardcore match that earned respect and opened a lot of eyes. And there you have it. 10 matches that didn't just entertain but defined and redefined what it means to be a woman in a WWE ring. From the hardcore brawls that were ahead of their time to the technical masterpieces in NXT, all the way to the main event of WrestleMania. This is our story, written in sweat, sacrifice, and a whole lot of passion. It's a story of fighting for a spot, earning it, and then proving to the whole world that we are the main event. But listen, this is just the start. For every match on this list, there are a dozen more that could have made the cut. The fight between me and Charlotte at Evolution, the last woman standing match, that was a war. Bayley and Sasha's Hell in a Cell match, unbelievable. The first ever Women's Royal Rumble, historic. So, do yourself a favor and dig deeper. Check out the honorable mentions in the description below. Go on a deep dive, you won't regret it. The well of great women's wrestling runs deep. Thank you for coming along on this little trip down memory lane with me. It's been a hell of a ride, and the best part is, we're nowhere near finished. The fight continues, and the next generation is hungrier than ever. If you enjoyed this, make sure you hit that subscribe button for Reese's channel because there's plenty more where this came from. Now get out of here and go watch some wrestling.